across the board. Everybody had different ways of how to categorize different functions, activities, so forth and so on. But this really put it in play, and it took us quite a time to get everything in order in that regard. But we got it now, and everybody has to, as we all say, sing by the same sheet of music. So. And anyway, let's take a break from the questions, and we're going to come back with more questions for Charlie Davis, our finance and assistant city manager.
WDTV 13. Programming is sponsored by McCrary Daniels Insurance Agency, Joe's Check Cashing,
Roscoe Allen Jr. and Gubus Modular Buildings in Ocilla, Georgia. We proudly support local programming on WDTV 13. Storage Solutions, etc., locally owned and operated and located at 1010 Bowens Mill Road, Southeast in Douglas. Crystal Sermons, LLC Legal Services, supporting your local programming, WDTV 13, with offices in Atlanta and Ocilla, Georgia.
Study the unique ecology of our region and prepare yourself for an exciting career. South Georgia State College now offers a Bachelor of Science degree in Biological Sciences. Select the Nature and Ecology track to prepare yourself for a fulfilling career in a variety of fields. Or take the pre-professional track to lay the groundwork for further studies in medicine, pharmacology, and other health fields. Learn more online at sgsc.edu. South Georgia State College. You matter here.
We're back with more Douglas on My Mind, and once again, I have with me Mr. Charlie Davis, our assistant city manager and also our finance director, and we've been talking about budgets and how you develop those and different functions and different funds of the budgets in that regard. So we're going to delve a little deeper into the budget discussion, how we develop this monster of a budget, and it does take quite a bit of shall we say, activity to develop a budget, because there has to be a level of a focus of where we're trying to get and what we're trying to balance and how we're trying to hopefully bring revenues to bear to address that. So explain to the viewers how the budget is developed from kind of an overview as you see it.
Well, like I said earlier, at any given moment we're potentially working in 3 budgets. So we're in a current budget, we're closing out last year's budget, and then we start developing next year's budget. We work on a non-calendar year. Our fiscal year runs from July 1st around to June 30th for the following year. Somewhere around late December, we start compiling numbers, but even before then, we start listening to citizens' issues, if there's legal issues coming up, the political interest, because some of them have interest that they want to see transpire in a budget. And then we have historical issues where we know we got certain fixed costs that we've got to pay. So you put all those things together. Somewhere starting around January, we start putting numbers on paper when we submit it out to the departments, and then they start putting their wish list and then resubmit it to the finance department, where we combine it, and then we start having our city manager / department head meetings.
And let me qualify what he said. The wish list is more of a needs list. So they wish they can.
We start off with a wish list, and then we whittle it down to a needs list. It's kind of like at home around Christmas time.
There you go.
We start out with wanting a Maserati, and we wind up with a Pinto.
We get a Pinto at the end of the day. So, but that's a very tedious process to go through, and because obviously everybody has to, as I see it, fit into this small defined whole as far as trying to get everything balanced and in that hole for a budget. So.
And one of the tough things, just like us here at the city, at home, costs are rising, and one of the biggest things is it's just revenue and expenses, and expenses go up, and for us, and we'll get this I think down later in some other questions, but our revenues come basically from two forms. One is taxes. And the way you get more taxes, you raise taxes, and obviously citizens don't like that, and it's not very pleasing to the political side of things. The other thing is utility rates and utility transfers. people don't want to pay more money on their utilities, so we can't do more transfers. And like I said, and so when your revenue becomes stagnant and expenses are going up, we either have to cut services or public-private partnerships on services, find creative ways to still offer services without having to go up on taxes or go up on utility rates. And that's always the toughest part because, like healthcare now, the costs are just going through the roof. There's always legal issues, there's workman comp issues. So all those things you have to balance out and then still provide sidewalks and tennis courts and police protections and all that.
Right. And it is, and intuitively, most of us as citizens, and I put myself in the same foot in regards to that, don't want to see our costs go up, but we want the same level of service or better level of services. And you got to appreciate that if anything happens, obviously there's always going to be some cost increases because things don't stay stagnant. The challenge of it is revenues across the board have not been significantly increasing. What the financial analysts tell you, what you should have is growth in your community. You should have natural growth through people moving into your community. You should have buildings going up, properties being acquired, things of that nature, so that hopefully people will increase your tax base, increase your utilities in regards to their purchase of utilities and houses and things of that nature. So that has, as y'all all know, I don't have to speak to the crowd because y'all know this, but that has not been significantly increased in the last 4 years. We're seeing some signs, some upticks, but it lags when it gets down to the local government. The state is seeing some revenue increases, but it takes a little time for us to see that happen here for us. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges trying to develop a budget, is dealing with what we don't have a level of understanding how much revenue opportunity we might have in the future with all the rising costs of increases. So
one of the things, and this, I jump ahead a couple questions, but one of the questions you're going to ask is, what's some of the economic impacts on our budget, and we're talking about tax base here. And one of the things, and it's like most cities struggle with, we are starting to see signs of dilapidating houses, stagnant tax bases. And so one of the things that good or bad that we introduced and we'll be following up on is quality of life. You're seeing some of our staff people go around harassing you at home about pulling your trash cans back or mowing your lawn or fixing your houses up or whatever. Because one of the things that does have a financial impact on us, that if our houses are going down, neighbors start moving out, and economic demographics change, we have less taxes coming in.
right.
And so that's one of the things that you'll see over the next little bit, and I think the Mayor and Commission is starting to want to really see us pursued more in code enforcement. And one of the things we're talking about right now is dilapidated housing and finding money through CDBGs or splashed or tax revenues to start doing something with some of these dilapidated housing, so our tax base can become level and start rising. Because one of the things is, if you have old housing, dilapidated housing, economics don't build, but if you remove those houses, either new houses go up, or if it's zoned for something else, commercial zoning starts buildings start going up, so then your tax base starts going up. And like I said, the other thing is, is utilities. If the economy's growing and people are, buying more electricity, buying more water, if industry's buying more, we get more revenue off of that, which, and we'll talk about it a little bit later too, but one of the things, the reason we have utilities is to offer a lower utility rate to our customers. I know that's debatable sometimes when people talk about it, but it's still true. But we also then transfer some of that money to the general fund, which offsets the lack of taxes coming in to be able to offer, recreation, police, public safety, whatever it may be. But kind of going back to finishing up, what we was talking about, how do you develop a budget? Like I said, around January, February, we submit it out. Then when it comes back in, the city manager gets the budget, sits down with the department heads, and then we start changing the wish list into a needs list. And then somewhere around April, during the month of April, we have meetings with the mayor and commission to go over the budget. Sometimes that's quick, sometimes it's not as quick, because they have the ultimate final say on a budget.
Correct.
And sometimes all hearts and minds are on the same sheet of music, and sometimes it's not. But we have the month of April, May, and June to get it finished, because like I said, our budget year starts on July 1st. by law, we have to advertise that budget once they kind of have a consensus on it. We have to have a public hearing, and there's about 2 weeks in between that, and then we can actually adopt the budget and then have it in place by July 1st.
We don't have the same discretion that the federal government has, that they can do a continuing resolution to keep spending money. We don't have that luxury.
Or print money.
Or print money. So we do have to balance the budget, and we do have to finalize the budget in that same principle. So, it definitely makes it's a challenge, because you got a lot of issues that are being at play, revenues, political side, and all the other issues that deal with us each and every day, that we try to move that ball forward in regards to budget. A lot of people don't know this, and Charlie came from the private sector probably about 11 years ago, 12 years ago?
14 years
14
ago.
years, okay. And government accounting versus business accounting is a little different, and but like we said about the House Bill 492, and I remember my conversation with my auditor at that time. I said, well, they really want us to look and feel like business model, because we went away from what we used to do back in my day. I'm telling my age again. Cost accounting to accrual accounting, and now obviously it does have its different flavor and relationship to, but we do have some of the same principles to some degree, but it's still a little bit different to some degree. So kind of talk a little bit about the difference of what makes government accounting different from business accounting in some shape or fashion.
Like I said, probably the single biggest difference is in the private world, a budget is established by whatever governing authority, boards of directors, presidents, CEOs, CFOs, whatever it may be, and it's more of a guideline. They're after a bottom line. They're after a certain percentage of return on their money, or a certain bottom line dollar, and so revenues and expenses are just a means to get to that bottom line. Whereas in government, we don't make a profit. But we are established through fiscal control that the mayor and commission, or the state of Georgia, or whatever entity you're at, has established. This is all you can spend money on, regardless of how much you take in, and this is your control. This division can spend this much, this division can spend this much, and so we have to make sure that we stay within conformity of meeting those budget goals there. So it's not about making a bottom line, even though I guess technically we do have a little bit of a bottom line. It's called prior year surplus or retained earnings, because one of the things that we're trying to do, that they want 1 to 3 months in reserve, so you have a rainy day fund. We've kind of adopted where we want to get maybe a 4 to 5 month reserve there, because as you can see, like 2008-9 when the economy tanked, we was fortunate that we had a little bit of reserve put up. We did manage our money, that we didn't have to furlough people. We did offer some early retirements, and when some people did retire, we didn't fill certain positions through attrition and smart managing, or just common sense managing, we was able to weather that storm. But if you don't have some of those rainy day funds set aside, or retained earnings, or prior year surpluses, whatever, you won't be able to do that. So we're not in it to bank a lot of money, but at the same time, because if we're banking money, we're not offering services.
Right.
But at the same time, we do have to have some fiscal responsibility side in those days that will be coming. We've got to have some money set aside, and like sometimes we have spikes in healthcare, or workman's comp, so we have to have some of those money set aside to be able to handle those daily issues.
And that's good business principle with anything, whether it be private or public. But that is the challenge, to try to balance that in relationship to in the private sector, as Charlie said. Those will be just earning dollars. Those will be profits in relationship to the business sector. That's more bonuses for the individuals to reap versus us.
Well, I remember I was sitting in a meeting one time, and the guy said, I don't care what your budget is, I don't care how much money you spend, I don't care how much money you take in, as long as you hit the bottom line. Mm-hmm. So budgetary was just as a kind of a skeleton framework to use. All they cared about was bottom line, because it goes to dividends and stockholders and all those things, Wall Street. Whereas at government, it is, here's your control factors, which is your fiscal control, here's your budget, that's all you can do. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the biggest difference.
Right. So, well, look, I definitely appreciate your perspective working in the private sector versus the government sector, and now you got a good feel of both, and that helps our, hopefully, citizens, listeners understand some of that focal point. We've already tackle the economic impact a little bit, but let me deal a little bit more into that. One of the things that we were faced with, with eroding, I won't say eroding to some drastic, but we did have a drop in our tax base. A lot of our housing stock here dropped